Good afternoon. This is my first Adobe Connect, I must say, where I haven't had interaction with participants back. Um, so I'm thankful that I do have a couple people in the room with me, so I will have some conversation over the next 2 hours. What I would like to do is first read you a script that I've been asked to read you, and then we will proceed with our training, including introducing myself and what our objectives are for today. Um, so this is from Sean Carew, and she's the head of the paras. And she asked me to please read you this statement. Please be sure that all paraeducators at your site have typed their name into the chat box. Once all names have been typed in, click on the chat button on the bottom right of the chat box. This will email the attendance for your site. That's the first part of it. All participants need to sign into the chat area, whether you're taking it for credit or not taking it for credit. If you are taking this for credit, there is a one-page paper that is also due, and you can write the one-page reflection paper and submit it to Shawn Carew. It's SHAWN CUROE. She's at the Delhi field office. Her van route is number 7. Otherwise, you can email her at scuroe@aea1.k12.ia.us. Papers are due on November 1st. Participants not taking this course for credit do not need to write a reflection paper. So if you're not taking it for credit, you do not need to write a reflection paper, but you still need to sign in, please. Okay, I think that's all the notes that I have that I am required to go over. Since I can't hear you, you need to chat with me if you're having difficulties hearing me or understanding what I'm saying. There's going to be a lot of table conversation that takes place tonight with your partner. I'm going to call it elbow conversations. So I'm going to ask for some reflections in the chat room. That's going to be how we're going to communicate back and forth, is through the chat box, since I can't hear you and obviously you can hear me. So, okay, I think that's it. We'll go ahead and get started. My name is Amy Holst, and I work here out. How do you get screen to be full? I'm sorry, this chat thing. Julie's right outside the door. When she comes in, I will have her help you walk you through that on the chat room back. So, okay, my name is Amy Holst, and I work out of the Elkader field office. I work a lot with equity type things, bullying, harassment, with counselors, with administrators. I also am one of our poverty trainers and deal with anything else that pertains to the learning environment for students as far as learning supports go. In addition, I am also an RTI trainer, a PBIS trainer, and a CPI trainer. So kind of an array of things. I was a classroom teacher at one point in time. I worked with middle school and high school students. And then that's when I worked on getting my master's in counseling. Working with at-risk students and people that live in poverty tends to be kind of a passion area of mine. So if I kind of go off in an area that you need more clarification, please just ask in the chat room. So, okay, we are going to go ahead and get started. Also, I tried to set this up. If you end up taking notes as we go through this, you will be able to use all those notes that you took in your reflection paper if you're typing one. So hopefully I have it set up in a format that it should just kind of be sequential when you go down, and when you go back to write your reflection paper, you should have most of the information that you need. So it should be pretty painless in that process. So, okay, what I would like you to do now is I'd like you to have a little reflection. You can take out a piece of paper, and I would like you to have a little celebration about an area that you are really good with working with students. So what's a strength of yours when working with students? In addition, right after that, I want you to write down an area that you know needs strengthening when working with students. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a student in poverty, just a celebration, something that you do well, and then an area that needs strengthening. If you want to take a minute to do that, that would be great.
Okay, let's try the test again. Just go ahead and say something.
Can you hear me now? Yes, they said yes. Okay, excellent. Okay, so what I would like now, since we don't have a phone to go, no picture. Okay, I took my picture down, but in a minute I'll put my picture back up if you guys really want to see it. I kind of like it without the picture, but we'll put it back up in a minute. If you are willing to share from where you're at and tell me what are your successes or areas that need strengthening. If you're not comfortable sharing, you don't have to share. Can I just hear back a shout out from a couple people? Looks like we've got motivation. Howard, do you want to expand on motivation a little more? Patience, good rapport with kids, but with some kids it could be better. That's always kind of a challenge because there are just certain kids that we seem to mesh with a little more than others. Computer skills must be a strength, and Al McKee. Computer skills. Howard Winashik, willing to learn new ways of doing things. Yeah. Olwine cannot hear me. Can everybody else hear me? Thank you. Julie will be back in a second, and I'll have her chat with you, Olwine, to see if we can figure out a way to get you to be able to hear what I'm saying. Okay, now I'd like you to have a table conversation about what does poverty look like at your school and your community. So it's kind of a twofold, community-wise and in your school, what does poverty look like? If you want to have a table conversation, again, that would be great. That if you're writing a paper, that might be a question that you could start off one of your paragraphs with is what does poverty look like in your school or your community?
just are really hard to separate because
They take care of each other.
Okay, it looks like we're starting to get some feedback from some people on what it looks like. It looks like poverty looks like free and reduced lunches, backpack programs, kids club after school programs, behavior issues, no businesses, limited entertainment, low wages, low income trailer courts, drug abuse, alcohol. It looks like we also have another comment from Dubuque. Without your picture, we have no way of knowing if you are talking. Okay, so this is my problem with the picture. Julie's afraid that if we put the picture back up that it's linked to my audio and we can't understand why the audio part is affected by the picture, but it might be. So when she comes back by, I'll see if we can figure that out. So sorry about that. But what I am fortunate enough to have is some individuals in here with me who can also have a conversation with all of us. So it's not just me having the conversation. So we talked a little bit about what does poverty look like in Elkader and in at Valley, which would be Claremont and Elgin area. So we're talking about a little bit more rural than maybe like Owine, Decorah, or Dubuque. So go ahead and we'll talk a little bit about what we were talking about.
I think at the breakfast rooms in the morning, kids that look hungry, want extra attention.
Or maybe want to take their breakfast with them home because they won't have anything to eat when they get home tonight. They want to take part of it with them.
Mm-hmm.
Or we'll keep things that seem
Invaluable.
yeah, invaluable for us, like maybe a pencil or even a wrapper for something, or something like that, or even take care of each other. Brothers and sisters take care of each other and watch over each other.
In the community, it's kind of hard because we're in a small rural community, so we don't maybe see that as much. So
What we talked about too is like, what does it look like in the community? And you can't tell. I mean, there are times that you walk down the street and especially in the more rural areas, you might have assumptions about the way that people live for what they have, but you can't always tell. So, and when we talk about going to Des Moines and looking at downtown, you can actually see where homeless people are sleeping and, eating out of the dumpsters. When you come to the little smaller areas, you don't always notice what poverty looks like as much. So I want to show you a little video clip. It's called Children See, Children Do. It's on YouTube, and I'm going to remove my screen and show you a different screen. I'm going to share it with you. Just something to think about as we work with our children.
Looks like rain again today. Dark clouds gather, fill the sky. Don't know how to talk to you, just know how to say.
Okay, so I'm not saying that every single family that lives in poverty has those type of behaviors, but there are a large percent of our families that do live in poverty that are exposed to lots of different things that kids who live in middle class are not. So what we're going to do is we are going to take a look and have you guys take a little quiz. There's 3 different quizzes, and I'm going to have you take all 3. And what I did was, instead of having documents be all over the place, we're pretty much going to work from one document at this point. It is the Keystone AEA 1 Diversity Google site that I created. And this is a site that is open to the world. So anybody who wants to have access to the site can. And there is information on bullying, climate culture, counseling, crisis training, crisis article, our traumatic event response plans on there, diversity, equity, free resources, homelessness, multicultural gender fair, needs assessments. There's a link to our PBIS site that has everything PBIS related. There's a phone book with lots of different phone numbers for reporting, for suicide, for whatever it might be. There's a poverty link, and that's the link we're going to be using tonight. There's also an article about retention and social promotion for at-risk students, and then information about suicide and also technology, and then trauma and abuse, including sexual abuse and physical abuse. So this site is in the process of, I'm in the process of taking all of our information and putting it into one site. It's not complete yet by any means, but in the next couple of weeks it will be a little more complete. But for tonight, we're going to stick under the poverty link. So I'm going to go ahead and open it. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at quizzes. So I am going to go ahead and pull up a quiz. See if we can see it in the view. Oh, we can't. I'm going to download it. And I want you to have conversations with the person that you are next to and go ahead and take the quiz. Could you survive in poverty? Okay. And it looks like there's 18 of them. All right. So go ahead and have a conversation about that. We are having, is this linked on the website of Keystone AEA? No, not yet, but I will get it on our page under counseling, which would be my link. So I will get it on there in the next, I'm not tomorrow, but next week I will make sure that it gets on here. Otherwise, if you're interested in this site, you can, let me show you where you can find it. It's open to the world, so you could just type in the URL address, the one at the top up here. that one right there, that HTTPS, if you type in that exact site, you will also get to the site. In addition, you could just search for Keystone AEA1 diversity, and that should bring you to this site as well. Good question. Okay, so what we talked a little bit about in the area of poverty is that, let me go back to it, I'm sorry. Close your eyes for a minute if you're feeling like you're getting sick watching me go back and forth. You know, when I think of kids that live in poverty, I think of a child that doesn't even have their own pillow. What bed are they sleeping in at night? And oftentimes I think we get to know our students and we think we have a pretty good relationship with them. But do we really know if they have their own pillow? And I say that because that became a reality for me when I was a teacher, and I got to know a couple students a little bit more personally and found out that one of them didn't even have, the only thing that she had to her name was her puppy. Her mom was in and out of unit for meth. Her dad was not in the picture at all. When her mom got out of jail or wherever she was at rehab, she would find whoever she could find to stay with, and this child would be left to stay with friends, with boyfriends, whoever. This started as young as 8th grade. By the time she was a sophomore, she was not only considered homeless, but had nothing to her name. She had a puppy, and she could only stay with people that allowed that puppy to spend the night with her. So what she would do is she would find guys that she could go home with at night in order to stay warm for herself and her puppy. She did not have her own pillow. She did not have a dresser. She did not have a bed. They did have a storage unit that they rented. She worked a little bit to get a little extra money for the storage unit, but inevitably her mom would ask for that money, and then their stuff would be dumped out of the storage unit because her mom would use it for meth or other drugs. The reality, I think, for me was when she was thrown out of a second-story window through a glass window because after they had come home late, they had a fight, and he kicked her out of his house. She did go to the hospital, and that was probably the biggest reality I had as far as people who are living in homeless situations. She wasn't sleeping on the street, so she didn't look homeless. Many people didn't even know that she fit the true definition of homeless, and I'm going to show you where you can find information on the Department of Ed's site about homelessness. But she did not have any of these things that are here, and she could move in a half a day because she had nothing to move. When we talk about people moving in a half a day, literally they can pack up the back of a car or a trunk and go to their next location. So anyways, that's kind of the conversations that we were having over here. We also talked about how students who are poor don't believe that they're poor. I mean, they don't know any different. They don't even know that they're poor. They're happy kids. Some of them are happy, and kids that live on welfare don't realize that they're poor as well. Something I want you to take away from tonight is that people who live in poverty don't necessarily want to be middle class. They just want more money. People who live in middle class want more money as well. They don't necessarily want the hidden rules of being wealthy. They just want more money. Okay, so that's not any different. So people who live in poverty don't look at people in middle class and say, I want their lifestyle. I want to be just like them. They just want more money as well so they can live more comfortably. Okay, so the next quiz that we're going to go to is the middle class quiz. And I know people have seen this before. Okay, middle class. I will tell you that most people who are in education are middle class or have come from a middle class background. That's why when we have teachers who have come from middle class background and paras and whoever else, it's sometimes hard for them to understand what it's like for poverty, because most people in education live a middle class lifestyle or are middle class. They're most comfortable when they answer these exact questions. Okay, what are some feedbacks about the middle class that you guys want to share with us, and then we'll share with you what we've talked about? Okay, we'll start. We'll go first. When we looked at the middle class checklist, our group kind of decided that we thought this was the most comfortable area that we fit into. We couldn't answer every single question unanimously, but for the most part, we know the resources that it takes to be able to answer those questions if we need it. Yeah, so Dubuque kind of agreed with that. Doris, I'm happy you're finally getting connected. Yay. Okay, so now let's take a moment and let's look at what it would be like to live in wealth. A minute.
Test 1, 2, 3.
I don't know how long ago you want.
Can you hear me now? Yes, yes. Okay, so did anybody hear my Ponchero story? No? Nobody heard my Ponchero story? It was a really good story. Okay, let me start over again. Oh, I hope I remember it all. So, I served Dubuque School, also as well, and I'm down there quite a bit, and I sit at Culver's a lot because it's one of my favorite restaurants, and I've always wondered about Poncheros. I like Mexican food. Hold on, I just want to make sure you can still hear me. Can you still hear me? Yes, yes. Okay, we're good. Okay, so anyways, I really like Ponchero's food. And so I would sit and watch people go in and out of there, and most of the time it seems like it's a very busy place over the noon hour, and there are a lot of people who look like they work at a business type setting and they want to get in and out of there. So obviously it must be fine quality, quick, fast Mexican food. So I've always wanted to try it, but I didn't want to go in there and not know what to order because I wouldn't say I was intimidated, but I just didn't want to make the people behind me standing in line waiting annoyed that I didn't know what I was doing. It's kind of like the Subway Quiznos thing when you transition from Subway to Quiznos. It's definitely a different system. Do you get to have lettuce? If it's not listed on the board, does lettuce go with it? Kind of with tomatoes. So anyways, I was down there for a PBIS training, and my coworkers said, let's go to Poncheros for lunch. And of course, I was thrilled at this opportunity. So we went to Poncheros for lunch, and as we were in line for Poncheros, I kind of learned a little bit more about how to order. However, with that being said, I felt like there was always a lot of people behind me, and it made me a little bit nervous that I was looking at the board and not sure if I should get the rice or the beans or what comes with it. So inevitably, my bill ended up being like $15 or $12 because I didn't really know how it worked. So that's a simple way of thinking about hidden rules. So when we talk about families that live in poverty, they have different hidden rules than you and I have who live in middle class. And when they come into the school setting and they work with the office assistants or the secretaries and the administration and the teachers and the paras, if we don't have a relationship with them and they don't trust us, they're not going to give us anything back in return. Students can tell when people are being judgmental, and if you have a good relationship with the student and you're judging their family, that's going to sever that relationship with the student. So no matter what kind of parents kids have, kids love their parents unconditionally. And I believe people, even the people who don't treat their kids the same way that you and I do, also love their kids unconditionally as well. And sometimes that's hard to understand because the way that they treat each other isn't always the way that we would treat each other at home. So if you are judgmental of anybody's family who lives in poverty, I can guarantee that relationship is going to be severed over time. So what I want to show you now is I want to show you what it looks like for the economic hidden rules by class. So people that live in poverty, their possessions are people. So that would be their grandparents, their parents, their siblings, their aunts, their uncles. If you go to a person's house who lives in poverty or to their apartment or wherever it might be, you're going to see multiple people that live in one household. Kids are going to be running around. It's going to be loud. It's going to be chaotic. To you and I, it's going to feel like there's a lot of chaos. We don't see it. Hold on one second. I see I'm getting some chats here. We don't see it. Okay, let me go back. Let me see if I can share it. Hold on. I'm sorry that this is not working as smooth as I would wish. Can you see it now? Yes, you can. I can see it on my other screen. Okay, great, good. Okay, so it's going to be loud and chaotic. People who live in middle class, they value things, okay? They value the car that they drive. They value the house that they live in. It's a little more materialistic than the people who live in poverty. And then wealth, they value things that are a little bit higher, like one of a kind. So specialty vases, specialty food, specialty couches, and they're going to order their stuff from the finest places. It's not going to be appropriate to go to Slumberland and buy something from Slumberland. Poverty, money is to be spent. It's to be used, and I'll tell you why that is. So an example that I can think of is a boy who's in 3rd grade who wants a new bicycle. And so his teacher has a good relationship with him, and his teacher says, well, if you save your money, you can buy yourself a bicycle. The little boy says, okay, great, I'm going to start saving. So he saves $40. His mom finds out that he has $40 saved. What do you think happens to that $40? It's gone, okay? Mom takes it. Mom scolds the kid for saving the money for a bike. We can't even pay our rent. We're going to be evicted, and here you think that you need to save for a bike. On top of that, mom's upset because who does that teacher think she is or he is that they're better than us to tell my kid to save for a bike. We will provide for our child what they need. So money's to be used / spent. There was an episode on TV not that long ago where they were talking about people living in poverty using their food stamps to buy bottled water. Did anybody see this? The huge bottles of water. People would step outside the store, dump it out, and then bring it back in to get the $7.50 deposit to be able to buy alcohol and cigarettes because they needed the cash for that. And you can't buy that on food stamps or on the debit card. Money's to be used and spent because if you don't spend it, it's not going to be there. It's not going to be there long enough. People who live in poverty owe people money all the time. So they don't want any extra money laying around. So the first thing they're going to do when they get their check is they're going to go spend it. And it's usually on entertainment. That's what they enjoy to do, go to the movies. People will say to me, the kids have nicer tennis shoes and nicer phones than my own kids have or than I have. And that seems to be a big beef. Or they drive a really fancy vehicle because they spend their money the minute they get it. And they will buy nice things. They're not going to buy inexpensive, junky items. Another situation I can think about is there were twin kids. They were girls in a school setting, elementary. And for Christmas, the teachers went together and collected a pot of money for the twin girls. And they purchased them, I want to say, clothing. This has been a few years back. When Christmas break was over, they asked the girls, about the clothing. They had found out that mom and dad had returned it and that they ended up buying a new TV. So the staff was mad. That was not meant for a new TV. But when you give money to people, you cannot dictate how they spend it. So to them, clothing was not important. The entertainment of the TV was what was important. So although you had frustrated staff, if they understood the hidden rules of poverty, they really had no reason to be frustrated. When you give a gift like that, once it's out of your hands, it's a gift. So middle class people is to be managed. I can tell you now that there are 2 different kinds of poverty. There's generational and there's situational. Generational poverty has been passed on for 3 generations or more. Situational poverty is exactly what a lot of our world has been in the last 5 years. It's people who were middle class, lost jobs, had to go down to 1 income or no income, had to take money out of their 401ks, out of their retirements, out of their investments in order to survive. So that's the difference. Situational is exactly what it is. It's situational. Generational has been 3 generations or more. On the middle class, when we talk about situational, the hard part is that people who are in situational poverty have middle class values but are living with no money. So it's really hard to maintain your middle class values when you have no money to be able to manage. And like I said, our economy has hit an all-time low in the last couple years. So we have more and more people who are in situational poverty. And then wealth is to be invested. Okay, money is to be conserved, and if they're going to spend it, it's going to be on lavish things because they can afford to do that. So, personality, people in poverty, it's for entertainment. I've kind of touched on that a little bit. Sense of humor is highly valued, okay? So we have to remember that when we are working with students in the classroom, and I have another document that will talk a little bit about that, but when we work with students in the classroom, when they get in trouble, they might laugh. It might be a sense of humor. And that's not out of disrespect to the teacher, but oftentimes it appears to be that way. Middle class, when we talk about personality, achievement is highly valued, very highly valued. And it's for acquisition and stability. And when we talk about wealth, it's purely connections. Okay? Personality, they don't care if they're liked or not necessarily. They just want to know how can they get higher. What's my political gain, my social gain, my financial gain? What connection do you have to me that's going to benefit me? Because they already have the money and the friends. They don't need either one of those two things. So most of the people who live in wealth are doing it for the connections. So social emphasis, social inclusion of the people they like. Okay, so most of the time, people that live in poverty are going to hang out with people that live in poverty. And I guess that's probably the same truth for middle class and for wealth. People in middle class are self-sufficient. They don't always count on others. People who live in poverty don't think anything about calling up one of their friends, asking for money to finish paying off their rent for the month. Might get the money back, might not. And then people who live in wealth, it's for social exclusion. So when we talk about food and poverty, the key question, did you have enough? Okay, did you have enough? We were talking a little bit earlier today about the students that maybe take extra food and stick it in their backpack. I can think of kids that, I can think of a child that stole food out of the teachers. There was myself and another teacher, we had file cabinets full of food, and the food would come up missing. Kids were stealing food. So those kids need the food. Middle class is, did you like it? The quality is important. Did you like it? And did you get enough? And then for wealth, was it presented well? Presentation is very important. Okay. Poverty, when we talk about clothing, it's expression of the personality. We can all think of kids and their clothing. Let's take a minute to actually have a little chat about this. What are you seeing for clothing when it comes to kids that live in poverty? Go ahead and let's start a chat on it, and we'll add our 2 cents over here. Shoes? What about shoes?
When they go buy a pair of shoes, yep.
Shoes are very important. It's one of the most important things they have. Oversized, not proper fitting, absolutely. Yeah, the baggy jeans, maybe that aren't even, they're meant to be that way. They're hanging off their hips and...
In the smaller children, they might be oversized for a different reason because they got them from someone.
Yeah.
And they don't fit because they got them from.
Yeah, we also over here, we're talking about oversized clothing in the little kids is because they've been handed down, maybe from an older sibling, from somebody else that lives in that area. They're dirty, they're not weather appropriate, wearing the same item for the whole week. That's why it's so critical that your school nurse and your school counselor has extra clothing. You know, some schools have washer and dryers where they can wash the kids' clothing. Toothbrush, toothpaste to help those kids out. Yeah, if you see a shirt with ketchup on it twice that week, you know the kid didn't spill ketchup in the same spot twice that week. So, yeah. Thanks. All right, and when we talk about clothing on, oh, let me say one other thing too. Kids that live in poverty, I know we have a rule about the hoods. You can't wear a hood in school, into classes, but kids that live in poverty, especially as it's getting colder, tend to sleep with their hoods on, okay, because they don't have the warmth that we have. Will these handouts be available for us to print out for our paper? They're all on the Google site. Yep, you just got to go there, hit download, and you can print them. Yep, you can print anything you want off that site. So I know that becomes a bit of a conversation when we talk about the hooded kids because that's what they're used to. That's what keeps them warm. That's how they feel most comfortable. When we talk about middle class clothing, clothing is valued for its quality and acceptance into the norms of middle class. The label tends to be important. And then when we talk about wealth, clothing valued for its artistic sense and expression. The designer is important. Okay, where they got it from is important. Did they even get it in the United States? Time. Okay, for people in poverty, the present's the most important. It's the here and now. That's why we're impulsive when we spend the money. We spend the money right when we got it. Decisions are based on the moment of feelings or survival. Okay? When we talk about middle class, the future is the most important. Decisions made against future ramifications. Why are we doing what we're doing? Are we saving enough to be able to survive how many years from now? And then for the wealthy, traditions and past history are most important. Decisions made partially on basis of tradition. All right, education. Education, okay. Not always a reality. It's not, some people in poverty don't value education at all. We do have other people in poverty that value it, but if they live in the here and now, they don't set goals. So if they're not setting goals, part of us in middle class is that we set goals to graduate from high school and go on to college. We set goals to save money so we can have nicer things later on. We save money so we can retire someday. But if you're living in the here and now, graduating from high school is not always a reality. And if they didn't graduate from high school and they had a poor experience and they didn't trust people when they were younger, sometimes they're not going to value it and trust the teachers now because of their experiences that they had. And this isn't every family in poverty. This is just stereotyping the bulk of it. And the same with the middle class and the wealth statements. When we talk about middle class, it's crucial for climbing the ladder and making money. Education is. I mean, the more education you have, the higher you can typically climb the ladder. And it's also to some degree about who you know. In education for the wealth, it's maintaining those connections. Okay, it's who you are and what you have to offer me. Destiny, poverty believes in fate. It just worked out this way. It's too bad that we don't have any money. It's just how life is, okay? If you believe in fate, you're not always going to make goals to be able to set yourself to move to that next level. Where when you're middle class, you believe in choices. You believe that the future, what happens now is going to affect your future. You know that. You understand that. When you live in poverty, you understand that, know that as well, but you believe that it is what it is, and this is where I'm at, and there's nothing that really can be changed. So, language. Okay, we have different languages. It's casual and it's formal. Casual is the language that we hear on the street. Casual is the language that we hear in the classrooms. It's about survival. People that live in poverty have story after story after story, and they tend to embellish in it with their language. Because of that, that's their entertainment. Their stories are their entertainment. So oftentimes that casual register, they make up things as they go. They make up different vocabulary as they go because that's entertainment. That carries over into the classroom. The thing about this that's important is that kids, when they come in at a young age, don't know that there's different rules, okay? And so we need to make sure that we're not putting the kids down for the rules that they have at their own home, but that we're teaching them that those are the rules that you have when you leave school. But when you're at school, this is what we expect. Our buildings that are PBIS buildings can help with that because every kid gets the foundation work for what they expect on their expectations. Where the kid in poverty doesn't feel like they're being singled out because every student is being taught how to line up at the drinking fountain and how to walk out to recess and how to engage with other kids. It's just what we teach to all kids so they don't feel singled out. When we talk about middle class and wealth, we're talking about formal register. We know what to say and when to say it and how to say it for the most part. As we get older in the school setting, we become better at that, a little more eloquent for most of us. We do still have students who go through the system and still don't know how to have a proper conversation with an adult. So family structure. When we talk about poverty, it tends to be about the mom, okay? The kids almost always are with the mom. And the father figure may be in and out of their life, and they may come in and out and in and out and in and out, and they may have multiple kids by multiple people. The mother is the family structure. She is the solid person of that family. So if you need to win somebody over, it needs to be the mom in poverty. When we talk about the middle class, it tends to be a little bit more of the father. However, that's been changing over time because there are more females that are working outside the home and are having more say besides just the father. And then for wealth, it just depends on who has the money. Worldview, local setting, it's right here, it's right now. If we're going to be evicted, where are we going? It's probably not going to be really far. We have kids that we call frequent flyers. They jump from school building to school building, but oftentimes they come back and they go back and forth between schools. And most of the time their school jumps aren't really, really far. It might be where the job is for the moment. It might be the house that they can sleep in. It might be who the mom dates this week is who they're staying with or this month. It just kind of is all over the board. When we talk about middle class, we see things nationally. And then when we talk about wealth, it's international view. Love and acceptance for people in poverty. are based on whether an individual is liked, period. That's all there is to it. If they don't like you, you can forget it, okay? In order to have them like you, they have to trust you, and they have to trust that you're doing what's best for their child.
I can't hear you. Can't hear you anymore.
Okay, hold on. I can hear you fine, it
There
says.
you go.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Okay, all right, we're gonna keep going. Okay, so then when we talk about driving forces, I'm sorry, let's go back to love. So when we're talking about poverty, if they trust you that you're doing right by their family and that you're not being judgmental of their family, they're going to accept you to work with their student. If they think that you're being judgmental of the family and they don't trust you, it's going to be hard to have that relationship with that family. And without that relationship with that mom or the father, it's going to be difficult to move forward with that child. So when we talk about middle class, love and acceptance, it's conditional. It's based largely on achievement. You can tell the difference with people who parent sometimes in a grocery store. I don't know if anybody's ever been to a Walmart or a Target or a Hy-Vee, and you can tell the interactions that parents have with their children in a grocery store. However, I want to say that the caveat to this is that sometimes people in middle class can put on a good show when they're in public. And some of them have the same behaviors and tendencies behind closed doors, they're just not doing it in public, okay? So when we make judgments about that, there are middle-class people who are treating their children the same way behind closed doors. They just know when it's appropriate to do it and when it's not. And then for wealth, love and acceptance is related on social standings and connections. The driving forces for people in poverty, this is what you need to know. The driving force is survival, relationships, and entertainment. Those are the three things, and survival is number one. So when we talk about people that live in poverty, survival is the key for them to survive, okay? They need to make sure they're getting their needs met. There's an article that I got out of NEA today, and I'm just going to read you a little bit about survival when we talk about homeless. So the article was called Address Unknown. And it talks about those kids who never eat lunch and say, oh, I'm just not hungry. Well, there may be another reason why they're not eating lunch, and it's because their mother's purse is empty. Consider the kid who never makes it to school on time, or the one wearing that same ketchup-stained shirt again. Where do you wash your clothes when you live in a car? Sometimes it's just a matter of listening. Their first priority has to be shelter, food, and clothing. Okay? So if kids don't have shelter, food, and clothing, they're going to have a hard time concentrating at school. After they're fed and warm, then you can turn your attention to the academic needs. One of the last things that this article says that I think is our take-home message that I'm going to have you guys talk about at your table is homeless children have been disappointed so many times that they won't take stock in anybody's word. You've got to let them trust you again. Okay, so they've been disappointed and had promise after promise, and promise has been let down over and over again. How do you build that trust again? Okay, I'm just going to give you a personal example. I happen to be at a birthday party more than once with a family that has multiple kids, and they do live in poverty. They've been evicted. They've had their lights shut off. We have a mutual friend is how that works. And the kids, when they come to the birthday party, are dressed to the hilt. They look fantastic. At Christmas time, they had over 100 presents underneath their Christmas tree. Over 100 presents. But they did not have any money to pay their rent. They did not have any money to put gas in their vehicle. They did not have any money to pay their electricity bill. They were bumming money, including prior to the 100 presents put under the tree, posting a post on Facebook saying that they were sad that their kids would not have Christmas this year because they had no presents to give their kids, asking for donations. Okay, the money came in, not from strangers, but from their welfare check, and they spent the entire check on presents, because that's what they do. It's entertainment. However, the one child was in high school, and she was a freshman at the time, and I asked her what she wanted to do when she was done with high school. And I was trying to not be offensive to the family to talk about college, because I wasn't exactly sure where they stood with that. And the girl proceeded to tell me that her favorite classes were math, because she loved the teacher, and chorus because she loved singing, but the teacher did not treat her very well. Okay, so my first gut reaction was, well, she won't be in chorus long. This will probably be her last year for chorus. And math, she really liked the teacher. So she proceeded to tell me that she wanted to be, I can't remember if it was a doctor or a pharmacist. And so we talked about the value of her high school years and making sure that she understood math pretty well and that she understood chemistry and science if she was going to be a pharmacist and the core classes that she would need for graduation. And we talked a little bit about GPA. But my point of the story is that by the time kids turn about 16 years old is when they start to finally realize that not only they are different, but that whatever they dream they're going to be might not really happen. Kids that live in poverty have big dreams and don't understand the reality of setting a goal to get there. So by the time she became a sophomore, we've had multiple occasions over the years together. She did graduate from high school, and I cannot tell you yet because we haven't had another birthday party if she went on to college this fall or not. But I will tell you that about her sophomore year, she started dating a man that was in his mid-20s. My biggest fear was her becoming pregnant and dropping out of high school, but she did complete high school. But I think she became a little more aware that maybe it was going to happen. With that being said, her mother, she had been given some money, and her mother would not allow her to open a savings account. Because who did we think we were having a conversation with her about saving money? Mom didn't save money, and they're doing just fine, so why should she have to save any money? So sometimes you have to make sure you respect the family and value their values and not overstep your boundaries about what your middle class values are, because it can be detrimental to the relationship with that child and just for the child in general. So go ahead and have a conversation now with each other, and I'm going to pause or mute our microphone so we can have our conversation here. And I want you to talk a little bit about what does it take to build trust with these kids that live in poverty. Talk about some situations you've had. How have they worked out for you, to the better and to the worse? Who do you have a connection with that lives in poverty, and what's that connection look like? Go ahead, take a minute right now. Okay, we're back on. It looks like my microphone is working. Alan McKee said it's hard to get them to trust you. It's hard to be fair, be consistent, take things slowly, builds trust. Be honest and respectful, lead by example. Yeah, be honest. That's the biggest thing. And if you make a mistake, own it with them. Teach them that. Teach them how to set goals. Teach them how to do those kind of things. The one thing I would say to maybe err on the side of caution, I've heard people say or have asked me that kids want, let's just go back to the bike example. So I'm trying to teach them how to open a savings account and how to save money, and you have to work hard to get nice things. But to be quite honest, there are some people who can work 2 and 3 jobs and make minimum wage and still don't have enough money to make their ends meet. And they're working round the clock. So sometimes students see that happening and they think, why would I work when we can collect as much money doing nothing? Okay, so we need to make sure that we are not putting down a family member that is choosing to collect money off the system versus working for it, because there are a lot of people who are working 1, 2, 3 jobs and they're still not making enough money to make their ends meet. So, and health insurance is very expensive. And if you go back to work, I know they have Hawk insurance, but if you make over X amount of dollars, you're not going to qualify for Hawk insurance. So you're right, it is hard for them to get you to trust you. Yeah, so we can do this at school, but to get supported at home is the hard part. It is, and this is where you really have to realize that you can make a difference while the kids are at school. You can't necessarily do it when they're out of school. And I always say no shame, no blame, but no excuses either. So it's really easy for us to blame parents for the faults of the kid. Well, if you knew the mom and dad, you'd know why they act this way. And to some degree, that is true. But I can think of students that have beat the system and that they don't turn out like their siblings and they don't turn out like their parents. So you're right, that is hard. We can do what we can do at school, but it's hard to get that support at home. We talked a little bit about some of the languages that kids are coming to school with. When we've got elementary kids using the F word or calling teachers other things, sometimes if that's what they hear at home, they don't honestly know that that's not appropriate. But once you reteach them that, and that's why if you have PBIS and you're working on those structures with all kids, even if you don't have PBIS and you're working on those structures with all kids, they don't feel like they're being singled out, because being singled out is humiliating and it's embarrassing. The other thing we talked a little bit about is the play at recess. Sometimes kids tend to show a little bit more aggression or violence when they're playing at recess. Not all kids, but some of them do. That was another conversation we had. What else? Anything else you guys want to share? Okay, I'm going to pull up the first page of an article then for us to look at, and it's a really fast read. We're only going to read a column and a half on it. I'm not going to read it to you, but let's take a look at it. And it's called Working with Students from Poverty. This is more information that you could use for your paper if you're using it. If you have to write it, excuse me. Let me see if I can get it a little bit bigger here. Okay, what I want you to read is all the way to behavior analysis, so a column and a half. When we get about halfway down, I'm going to have to scroll it down for everybody to see. I apologize about that. I don't know how to get it all on one screen. So we'll go ahead and start reading. Can you see it? Okay. What conversation do you want to talk about with that? Take a minute to have an elbow conversation. Hello? Oh, there we go. It's back on again. What kind of conversations are you guys having out there? Can you hear me out there? Excellent. I see somebody's typing. Okay. So I'll start then. One of the conversations that we had here was about the physically fighting. So I talked a little bit about how instinctual it is for kids to fight at our own homes at a very young age, even when they haven't been exposed to any violence or fighting, or I guess yelling or screaming. So imagine if they've been exposed to it and they need it for survival, and then they come back into the school setting and their coping strategy outside of school is to be physical. That's going to be their same coping strategy inside of school if they haven't been taught any different. That was one of the conversations that we talked about. We also talked about how heartbreaking it is to see kids who live in poverty and who have these struggles and really don't understand the difference or have other coping skills that they can utilize when they're in the school setting. Okay, what I want you to do is we're going to have a little reflection piece right now. Then after that, if you don't have any other questions about poverty, I'm just going to show you a couple things on the site that might help you for future reference when it comes to bullying and harassment and what are the protected classes. So go ahead. This is the reflection piece right now. If you want to take a minute, and if you're writing your paper, this could be part of your conclusion. What's your takeaway message? What are you going to do differently because you came here today? Okay, because part of the time when we go to presentations is that they may be entertaining or they may not, they may be good or they may not. But what are you going to do different because of it? We're responsible for our own learning, and part of that responsibility means that when we take time to go to a training, we're going to utilize or use something that we learned that night. So what are you going to do when you walk out of here that's going to be different than before you walked in the door tonight? Go ahead and take a moment to write that out. Okay, so it looks like we've got some people who are typing up some of their reflections. Not to be as judgmental as we are unaware of what events have taken place at home in the morning or at night. So yeah, that's a key factor, because if the kids just came off the bus from being screamed at by their parents and their parents haven't had any sleep all night because they've either been working or abusing drugs or alcohol, they're not going to come in the best mood, and they're probably not going to be the way that we would hope they would be. So thank you, yeah. We also were saying that those kids that are the heavy hitter kids, the really tough ones, those kids seem like they never miss a day of school. The kid that I'm thinking about that I had from 7th grade to the senior year, I swear that kid hardly ever missed school. He came to school every single day, and I could hear him walk down the hallway. I mean, it's like his voice carried through the whole entire building. And the really sad part about it is he scored very well on his ITEDs. He did on his ITBS. He was a very smart kid. He could be a really nice kid when he would put his macho-ness away. He was a very nice kid. He just had a baby a couple weeks ago. He's 22 now, and some of the conversation that I witnessed from him, I would say he probably still has a little bit of the same personality or mentality. But Alan McKee said, be more patient, more in tune with their needs and situations. No matter how hard you try, sometimes you cannot change their behavior. Yeah, sometimes we just have to love these kids and accept them for who they are. And teach them appropriateness. And sometimes it takes years. I can think of another girl that I worked with that I had from 7th grade, and it probably took me 2 years for her to trust me, and then maybe another year or two before she realized how to change her behavior. And she still might blow up at another teacher, but when she would come down to see me, we would march back, and I would role play how to say I'm sorry and try to make men's right. So it takes a long time to trust and to change behavior. You're right. And if you only have these kids for 1 year, what about that? But when we look at what research says about our at-risk population, if they have one relationship with one adult for 1 year, that's all it takes for them to be on track to graduate. Relationship, well, there's other things that they have to do too. Let me back up. They have to actually turn in their work and pass classes. But that relationship is really vital. It's also vital when we look at suicide rates in kids that commit suicide and do not have an adult that they can turn to at home or in the building. Howard Wynn, try not to assume what a person's home life is really like. Yeah, exactly. We have some perceived notions that some households are really wonderful or not really wonderful at all, and we really don't know. We really don't know. The longer I do my job and the things that I hear, I guess nothing really surprises me anymore about anything. And I always say you never really know people. You never really know them until you're part of them, and then sometimes you don't know them even then. So you're right. Meet the child for where they're at right now today and their families, because you're right. You don't know what their home life is really like. Dubuque put, now that we have a better idea of how they think, it makes us less judgmental with our actions and patience. We can try to build up the trust better. Yeah, so, and kids can't help what they come from. There's no way around that, whether they're in kindergarten or they're a senior in high school. Kids cannot help the life that they live. That's what they were born into. That's what they've been taught. And how challenging would it be if you were told that night that you're never going to succeed? We talk about the 5 to 1. That for people who live in poverty, they get they have 5 negative to 1 positive. Kids that do not live in poverty have 5 positives to 1 negative. So if you heard 5 negatives every night with 1 positive maybe in there, eventually you're going to start living out that self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay, so when kids are put down and when they are told things or they watch what their parents are going through, they're going to believe that. So when we are judgmental of that, that's really hard because they can't control what they came from. And remember that people that live in poverty love each other just as much as we love our own kids. And those kids love their parents. Even if they diss their parents, that girl that I was talking about earlier who was thrown out of a 2nd-story window, Her junior year, we got a collection of money and paid to have her hair done and her dress, and she went to prom. And I remember her senior year, she just turned 18. She was a couple credits away from graduating, did academically very fine. She sat in my classroom and she bawled and bawled and bawled. And I said, we have done everything over these years. We have tried to find a place for you. We have called DHS to find you foster care. We have paid for food, for shelter, for clothing, for dog food. We've helped you not be evicted out of a shelter. I mean, what else do you need? What else can we do for you? Eventually, you have to take care of you. And she cried and said, all I want is my mommy. All I want is my mommy. And I remember I just melted that day thinking, gosh, that's something we can't give you. You're 18 years old. You've seen your mom on meth, in and out of meth. You've been beaten up. You have no dad. Your mom works at a gas station when she can work, and that's all you want is your mommy. There is no amount of money or food or clothing or materialistic things that are going to make her life any better. Sadly enough, she dropped out that year right before graduation. She had a couple credits to go. She went to an alternative school, like an hour from here, and then she dropped out of there. I followed up with her with a counselor there, and she did drop out of there, and she never graduated. She's also 22. She has a child of her own. She's had a couple abortions in between there. I'm out of the kids that I've tracked, 7 kids, a couple of them have served jail time. To my knowledge, she has not served jail time, but she's been in and out of extracurricular activities, abuse of drugs, and also relationships. So another sad situation, but all she wanted was her mommy, and she didn't want anybody to be judgmental of her mom at all. And she could put her mom down, but nobody else better put her mom down. So any other comments about poverty before I show you a couple other things, and then we'll wrap it up for the night? Okay, I'm going to minimize the screen and go back to the Google site. So as I mentioned earlier, there are multiple different categories here, actually so many categories that you just have to figure out which category you need, and then you can look at stuff. Something that you might be interested in reading a little bit later on, it's still under poverty. I put it under there since we were working together tonight, but this was a Des Moines Register article that was out, maybe a month ago, talking about trafficking girls. And girls that are prime targets to be trafficked. And what that means is girls that are living in homeless situations or in poverty, and they are getting paid money to be part of sexual rings. Okay, it's a pretty interesting article. There are 4 states that are starting to track it a little more. Wisconsin's one of them. Iowa is not yet. However, there's been a lot of conversation, including that big bust that happened in Cedar Rapids maybe a month or 2 ago on that prostitution ring. This article is in the Des Moines Register. There was also an article in the Cedar Rapids Gazette that I did not have my fingers on to upload here. But this is a really interesting article that you might want to read because it talks a little bit about, I think, a direction that some of our kids may be heading. Or they've always done it, but now it's becoming a little more to the forefront. Another area that you might want to go to is under equity. And there's many things under equity, but the one thing that might be of interest to you is the protected class chart, okay? Basically, it is our non-discrimination statement that we have to abide by. So when we talk about working with kids, we're really thinking about the protected classes under bullying and harassment. There are 17 protected classes that kids cannot be discriminated against, and SES is one of them, which is socioeconomic status. So that's kids that either live in poverty or have registered for free and reduced lunch some way or another. Maybe they're in a single home, but maybe they don't have total poverty guidelines, but somehow they are getting assistance. SES was also added to the non-discrimination statement about maybe 2 years ago. So you know that non-discrimination statement that is on all of your websites, or it should be, and it's in your handbook. It's the policy of blank community school district not to illegally discriminate on the basis of race, color, creed, age, marital status, blah, blah, blah. Sexual orientation, gender identity, and SES. So SES has been added to that. So when we think about poverty and we think about a comprehensive system, That's part of it that's been added in the non-discrimination statement. I find this interesting to look at, and when I help schools with their site visit, this is a document I do pull out, because that non-discrimination statement that I just talked to you about has to be on all of these different things, okay? The annual notification, parent handbooks, all these that go all the way across. That's what they look at when they're doing a site visit, and it's just best practice. Let me just see if there's anything else that, another resource that might be helpful for you is it's called Phone Book for Youth. If you're working with students who disclose information to you, sometimes they're closest with a school counselor, sometimes they're closest with the janitor or the teacher, and sometimes it's the para that they're closest to. I'm not sure how you handle your DHS reporting system. That is up for you to know and what your building says. But here are some other phone numbers that you can use, and I tried to put exactly what it was for. So if you have somebody who has problems with domestic and sexual abuse, this might be a phone number as a resource. The 9 line, it's just 1-800-99999. I mean, it's good for kids that they can use, and it talks about all these different things. Family to Family Iowa, this has people that helps them navigate the system. Our system is very cumbersome in the state of Iowa. So this helps, there's 65 of them, I believe, across the state, and it helps families connect with different type of counselors and resources that they need. And then the youth phone book, this is a National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. It's for people who have run away or are running away, and when you read that trafficking article, the girl actually was a runaway. It talks about the sexual abuse hotline, and then there's a rape crisis center there as well. Teen Health Line, Youth Law Hotline. So if you have students that are asking you questions that you cannot help them with, here are some resources for you. The thing that I would make sure I encourage you to do is if you give any of these resources out, that you also make sure you report it to the school counselor so they can keep tabs on what's going on, and then they can advise you to whether or not family members need to be called or what to do from there. I would not handle these situations alone. You always want to have somebody to consult with. So it looks like I have a couple people in the chat room. Let's see what's going on. Oh, maybe not. Maybe that's from earlier. Okay, so it looks like it's about 1:45. I think we've had a good night. I would have loved it if we could have interacted more. I do enjoy presenting, and I also enjoy sharing all the information that I have. So I encourage you to go to that Google site. The last thing I'm supposed to read to you, and then I'll take some questions if you have any, is that make sure that you have signed in. I have to sign you in yet. Make sure that you signed in the chat box so you can get credit for being here. And then the other thing is about the paper, that the paper needs to be submitted to Sean, Van Route number 7. It's due November 1st. I think you have lots of resources at your fingertips to help write that paper. Any notes that you took tonight, if you need additional support or help with any of it, just shoot me an email. My name's Amy Holst, and I'm aholst@aea1.k12.ia.us. So what questions do you have for me before we sign off? Thank you, Decorah. Yeah, share it with everybody. You can email the paper to Sean. Yep, absolutely. It's scurroe@aea1.k12.ia.us, and it's due November 1st. So if you're like me, I'd probably be emailing it on November 1st. So I would need to email it versus van mailing it. Any other questions or comments? If not, have a great night. Thank you.